Randy Couture, the natural, joins us here on the Fukerton.com. Speaking of promoters not handling their business the way they should, Tom Beard is no longer with Affliction, and of course he disrespected you, and there was no excuse for that. I'm just curious, as the company of Affliction itself, I know you've re-signed with UFC. How's your relationship with them after all that happened?
The relationship with the UFC or the relationship with Affliction?
With Affliction.
Well, I think that the whole thing with Affliction came to a head as I re-signed with the UFC, and I think I'd been asking for some standard business paperwork, like reports on income and taxes and things like that. Some of our partnership of paperwork that I wasn't getting for over a year, and I think I had a little bit of leverage as I went back to the UFC and continued fighting because of Affliction Entertainment to hopefully get some of those answers. And I think that's what pushed Todd over the edge, and he kind of came out the way he came out on the Pharrell show and those other places.
Yeah.
And it was unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the Affliction brand. It was unfortunate for the Extreme Couture clothing brand. I don't think it had to be handled that way. And in some ways, obviously I've put a lot of time and energy into building this brand over the last 12 years of fighting and representing myself in a certain way. And I think the clothing line is, with Affliction's help, has done very, very well. And it's been really nice to been able to sponsor a bunch of fighters and all those things that kind of got caught in the fray with the disagreement with the UFC. So I hope that we can kind of clear the decks, get on the same page, that we can move forward and continue with the brand. We're really excited that it's out in the men's warehouses now, 575 of those stores across the country.
Yeah.
And it's doing very, very well. But we're still kind of trying to settle our differences, and I'm still trying to get some of the basic business questions answered and come to terms with how we're going to move forward in a more productive way. And obviously, Affliction Entertainment is all still up in the air. They got their second show coming up, and there's been a question as to whether the tickets sales have gone well and how the pay-per-view is going to do and all those things. And I obviously have fighters that I train, like Jay Haran, who's fighting on that card.
Yeah.
So Belford, who's now training with Extreme Couture, is fighting on that card. So, for those fighters, I hope it goes well and that they, basically get paid, that they're able to continue to make a living.
I got you.
Doing what we all love to do. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Randy, appreciate your candor. I know you got a lot of these to do, so I got two more quick ones, and then we'll get you out. And really appreciate your time. A lot has been made about your desire to fight Fedor Emelianenko, and then, of course, there's the whole Affliction situation, which you just talked about. And Dana White, who always has been critical of Fedor and didn't sound like he really wanted to deal with his people, has actually intimated in the recent past that he would be open to that. And it seems like there's a great possibility that if this pay-per-view doesn't come off for Affliction, that he might be out there. Is that still something you want, and how likely do you think that'll happen?
Well, I think it's still a fight that means a lot to me. As a fighter, you want to fight the best guys in the world, and most people say that's Fedor Emelianenko. So I would love the opportunity to be the guy, to compete against him and beat him. So we'll see if that is a reality. And I know in me coming back to the UFC, one of the things that they expressed was that they would genuinely try to get Fedor on board with the UFC. And obviously, I think that him fighting in the biggest brand in the U.S. marketplace would be good for him. But there are a lot of variables and a lot of things that go into that negotiation. So we'll see what happens and how it all shakes out with Affliction. Right now, he's got his hands full with Arlovsky, so it'll be a very interesting fight.
Yeah, it certainly will. And the last one, I just wanted to get your pick, because who would know better than you on this GSP BJ Penn fight coming up. So exciting. Everybody's really jacked up for it. They're doing this great special on Spike TV. Who do you like in that one?
Man, it's a tough fight. And I think George St. Pierre is one of the most dynamic fighters that we've had in mixed martial arts, and he seems to be firing on all cylinders. He's a good size 170-pounder. And I think we've seen the best BJ Penn we've seen in recent years, but that was at 155. He had abs, he looked in shape, he had to train to be down there. So the question I have is how much quality weight in this time period could he have put on to deal with the size difference between him and George?
Yeah.
Style-wise, I mean, either guy can BJ has very naturally heavy hands. He's got good boxing skills. I mean, he tore George up the first time they fought in that first round. He just didn't have the gas to sustain it. And, you know, I think that's always going to be the knock against BJ. Is he going to be able to keep the pace for a 5-round fight? So, you know, it's a very, you know, talk about one of those matchups where you just don't know what's going to happen and how it's going to come out, and you could make a case for either guy. But and I think at that weight class at 170, I like George. George has got all the tools. He seems to be within himself, you know, mentally, and going out and putting together good performances and demonstrating a lot of skills that nobody really knew he had. And there's some tough things for BJ to deal with there.
Well, it's going to be a great fight for sure. And, Randy, it's a great pleasure to have you back in the UFC and fighting where people can watch you. And if you do accept that fight with Minotauro, that's something that happens. Can't wait for that. The Extreme Couture brand is phenomenal. You're making great strides with that. And the acting career is going well. You're conquering all fronts. Thanks so much for your time, man. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, take it easy, Randy. Thank you. That was Randy Couture joining us on thefukerton.com. And guy's nicknamed Captain America for a reason. Great hard worker, really into the way that he approaches his business, and really is conquering all fronts there with the acting and the clothes and the fighting. And I think he still has some good fights in front of him. He has to answer questions about his age constantly. I think that's unfair, and I don't think it was his age that cost him the Brock Lesnar match. I think he was doing what it is he wanted to do when he went into that match, and he just got caught by a good or a bad punch. That's still up for debate. But look forward to seeing him in the future, and thank you for his time. This has been thefukerton.com, and you're very lucky to have tuned in.